Again, the reason why when you have three buyers, one after the other, it's considered to be chazakah is because there's a kol, meaning that if the original owner, he's gonna say, hey, wait a second, how come you're selling the land? It belongs to me. So if it happens for 3 years, one after the other, okay, even though it's not 3 years in the hands of one person, it's still gonna be good enough. Why? Because there's a kol, it's gonna be something that's heard. Okay? Ve'edim, it says the Gemara, Ve'edim let liukara, but edim, they don't have a call.
No shtar. It's the same thing, but with shtar, without shtar, that's the difference.
No, he's saying that shtar, there's call, without shtar, there's no call. So Rava says, so according to Rav, if there's not going to be shtar, it won't be chazakah. Okay? Now, says the Gemara, Ve'edim let liukara, edim don't have a it's no public. Didn't Rav say, if a person sells his field through it with edim, meaning without a shtar, he only sells it with witnesses. He can still collect afterwards from nechasim mishubadim. What does that mean? That means that if a person he sells the field, right? Reuven sells his field to Shimon. Shimon buys the field. Now, what happens afterwards? Somehow, one way or another, they take away the field from Shimon, right? In that case, Shimon is still able to go back and to collect from other fields of Reuven that were sold through edim, even though they weren't sold through, even though it wasn't sold through shtar. Says the Gemara, wait a second. If that's the case, if there was only sold with edim, if it was only sold with edim, then how come we can collect how come he's able to collect from other fields, right? It wasn't publicized. So how can normally when something is publicized, you say, okay, this guy, you have to be careful with buying his field because someone else has a mortgage on his field or something like that, right? But over here it wasn't publicized. So because why? Because it was with edim. But yet we still see you can still collect from the field. Says the Gemara, Hatam lekuchot inhu afsidinhu anafshaihu. Right? So we're at the top of Mem Bet Amud Aleph. He says the lekuchot, the buyers, they are the ones that lose out on themselves. Why? Because when a person buys something, it's his responsibility to check everything to make sure that there's no mortgages. Exactly, no mortgages anywhere, and if he didn't do that, it's on him, not on anything else. So meaning, even though there's no code with the edim, but because the buyer has to make sure what he's buying, it's his responsibility. Says the Gemara, Umi Amar Rav Hachi, did Rav really say something like this? V'hatnan if a person lends his friend with through a shtar with a document, he can collect from mortgaged properties. But if he lent through witnesses without a document, he can only collect from free properties, unmortgaged properties. So we see here, Rav just said that you can only collect if it's without a document, if it's only with edim, you can only collect from bnei cholin, from fields that are bnei cholin.
But either he has the right or he doesn't.
So that's exactly what the Gemara is trying to figure out. Why is the difference? Says the Gemara, v'chi tema, and if you want to say Rav Tanahu Palig, that Rav was in the transition period between the Amoraim, between the Tanaim and the Amoraim. Okay, so Rav was exactly the period. Normally, Amora, he's not able to argue on a Tana. However, Rav, because he was in that small time frame, he was able to. He's allowed technically to argue on a Tana. Okay, so if you want to say, Amora. Rav is an Amora, but he has the koach to argue on a Tana, which almost all the other Amoraim they don't have. Okay, so if you want to say that Rav is able to argue on a Mishnah, okay, Veha Amar Shmuel, Veha Rav Shmuel, the Amrit Rabbi, both Rav and Shmuel both say Malve al Peh eno gove lo mina yoshim velo mina lekuchot. Says the Gemara. So they both said very clearly that if it was something that was just by word of mouth that he lent, he's not able to collect from the kuchot, right, or from the yoshim. So we see very clearly the Rav holds that you cannot collect from yoshim. Says the Gemara, Malve azavina karamit. You're asking me a question on from a loan to sale, right? The Gemara that we just started off with was talking about a sale. In sale, Rav says yes, you can collect the lekuchot. The person can collect from lekuchot even without a shtar. Why? Because he says when it's a sale, it's your responsibility to check it to make sure that everything is okay. But when it's a malveh, he says no. In that case, if it's without a shtar, you cannot collect because there's no publicity. Okay, ki kayazif bitzina kayazif ki hechi delo litzil nechse. When a person borrows, what does he do? He tries to borrow as secretly as possible. Why? Because if he's going to borrow publicly, what are people going to think about him? He doesn't have money. He's in thing. And then when he's going to try to sell his field, what's going to happen? They're going to say, he's pressed for money, so I'm going to give him a low price, and then he's going to be forced to sell at a low price, right? So when a person borrows, he borrows b'sheket. He borrows quietly. So therefore, if it's only alpeh, if it's only with edim, there's not enough publicity. There's barely any way to find out. But when it comes to buying things, even with edim, yes, you're right. There's no publicity, but there's still a way to check it. So that's why there would be a difference between malveh and halva and sale. Okay. כי כיזה בצינא כיזה, כי הכי דלא לזון נכסי עלה. זביני, man דזבין ערה, בפרהסיה זבין. When a person buys a land, right? Or when a person sells a land, he wants to sell it publicly. Why does he want to sell it publicly? Because now he says, I'm going to sell the land. Anyone who wants to come then buy land, they're going to come. And then maybe someone is going to offer me more than this guy's offering, right? So when he sells, he makes sure to sell it publicly. Okay? He does it so that it should be public and people should come and offer more possibly. Tano Rabbanan, Achala ha'av shana, ve'aben shetayim. If the father used the field for 1 year, okay, ve'aben shetayim, and the son for 2 years. Ha'av shetayim, the father for 2 years, ve'aben shana, or the son for 1 year. Ha'av shana ve'aben shana ve'alokeach shana. If it was either the father a year, the son a year, and then the buyer another year, meaning again there's always 3 years in all these cases. Harezu chazaka. This is considered to be chazaka. Says the Gemara, lememra. This is what it does. This mean to say delokeach it lekala. That means to say that when a person buys something, there's a call. It becomes public, right? Why? Because you said if the av is 1 year, the ben is another year, the father, the son, and then the buyer. What does that mean? That means that when the buyer, which is the 3rd year of the chazakah, it means that what? There's a call. When a father buys a field the 1st year, right? He buys the field the 1st year. It's in his possession, right? When it goes to his son, it's still technically considered the same thing. It's 3 years technically in the same place, so we're not worried about that. That doesn't bother us too much. What bothers us? When you say it's the father 1 year, the son another year, so that's technically 2 years of the same thing, and then you have a 3rd year of lokeach, a buyer. Now, between the buyer, between the buyer, there's no kesher, there's no thing, but the whole thing is that what it's trying to prove us that when the buyer comes, there's now a call, it now becomes public knowledge, and then it's 3 years. Why? Because again, when the father and son own the field, even one after the other, it's still
the father sold to his son. What do you mean one after the other?
Yeah. The son took chazakah of the field. Okay, so now, but the question is, or the proof that the Gemara is trying to bring is that what? That the lokeach, who's not connected to the father and the son, when he comes in the 3rd year, there's still a call, and then it can be considered a chazakah, and this is going to show us what
you know why. So later on, the father and son will come and say from the kone, hey, what are you doing in my field? No, it was
No, no again. So we have Reuven, that's the original owner of the field. He sells it to the father. Okay, and then the father owns it for 1 year. The son owns it for 1 year, and then the lokeach owns it for a 3rd year. This is chazakah, even though the lokeach has no connection to the father and the son. Yeah, so that's just supporting what we were saying before. Says the Gemara. Based on this, we have a question. If it was in front of the father 1 year and in front of the son for 2 years, okay? Bifnei av shetayim, if it was in front of the father for 2, ubifnei haben shana, or in front of the son 2, meaning 1. Sorry. So again, we have 3 years. Bifnei ha'av shana, ubifnei haben shana, ubifnei lokoach shana, harezu chazaka. Ve'isa asar kadaytach lokeach itlekala, en lecha mecha'a gedola mizu. So he says, wait a second. Now we're looking on the other side. Okay, meaning what? We're looking on the seller side, not on the buyer side, that there's a chazakah. Okay, now we're looking at the seller side. That we see that if he had it for 3 years, right? The father, the son, and then the lokeach. What do we see? We see from the fact that the lokeach, if the 3rd year by the lokeach, it's still that it's still considered to be chazakah, and then Reuven, the original owner, loses all his rights. What do we see from there? That again, that en lecha chazakah gedula mizu, that you have 3 people, right? So it says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa ki tanya hahi b'mocher sadotav stam. So he says, you know why? Maybe it wouldn't be considered to be a chazakah, because if, let's say, the father and the son, right? The son, when he sells the field that was originally belonging to the father, and then originally Reuven, right? What happens? He sells it as a group. Meaning he sells it inside a bunch of fields. He says, listen, I have 10 fields in this area, and one of these fields happens to be the field that he bought from Reuven. Okay, so when he sells it as a group, this is when there's no call. This is when there's not going to be a call. And then what? And then Reuven, when he's going to come to protest, he's going to say, hey, wait a second. Oh, I didn't hear about this. Because again, when he sells it as a group, so people don't pay attention to the individual field. Okay, so the first case where we said it was clear-cut chazakah, there's nothing what to talk about.
Sale, then Reuven has the right.
Then we would think that he has. We would think that he can talk. Okay. All right. Mishnah. Ha'umanin ve'ashutafin ve'arisin. Umanin is expert workers, right? Craftsmen, yes. Ve'ashutafin, partners, ve'arisin, sharecroppers, ve'apotropusin, and caretakers. En lahem chazakah. These type of people, they don't have chazakah in the field. Lo en lahem chazakah. Lo ish chazaka b'nechsei ishto. A person doesn't have a chazaka in his wife's fields. V'lo isha chazaka b'nechsei ba'ala. And a wife doesn't have a chazaka in her husband's field. V'lo av b'nechsei aben. And a father doesn't have in his sons, I think. V'lo field. V'lo aben b'nechsei av. And the son doesn't have in the father's fields. Why? Because all of these things, it's natural for them to be working in there. So the owner, he won't protest. Right? He has no reason to protest when he sees a person working in there. When do we say that there's no chazakah? When they just have the chazakah, when they're just being in there in the field for 3 years. Okay, if a person gives it as a matana, or brothers that split, right? Meaning they split the inheritance. Or if a person grabs the field of a convert, right? So in this case, Noel v'gader uparetz kolshehu harezu chazaka. If once a person just grabs onto the field, he either locks the door, or he makes a fence, or he breaks into the fence. Already in these 3 cases, it's going to be considered a chazakah. Why? Because in these cases, there's no there's no one that's able to protest the claim, right? The ger that has no inheritors. Who's gonna come and think? So it's like basically like first come first serve. Gemara. Avua de Shmuel veLevi, the father of Shmuel and Levi, Tanu taught Shutaf en lo chazaka. A partner doesn't have a chazaka. V'kol sheken uman, and for sure a craftsman. Shmuel Tani, however, Shmuel argues and says, uman en lo chazaka. The craftsman doesn't have a chazaka. Avar shutaf yesh lo chazaka. A shutaf does have a chazaka. Says the Gemara. V'az the Shmuel itameh. Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. Why? The Amal Shmuel hashutafin machzikin ze al ze umeidin ze al ze v'naasim shomrim sachar ze laze. Partners can are able to testify one another, meaning if someone came and said about one of the partners, Reuven and Shimon are partners. Levi comes and says, hey, this field that Shimon says he's a partner, it's really my partnership. Reuven is allowed to testify that no, Shimon is his partner, and ma barakan.
Listening.
So again, so he says like this: you have shutafin, you have partners, two partners. Okay, each partner is allowed to testify on his fellow partner. Okay, so Reuven and Shimon are partners. Reuven is allowed to testify that Shimon is his partner, and we don't say that they're nogiim badavar. Okay, we don't say that they have a personal interest involved. No, partners are allowed to testify on each other. That's one. He says you're able to also become shomer sachar for one another, meaning the partner, one partner, Reuven can tell Shimon, okay, listen, I want you to watch over my part of the field like yours, and I'll pay you for it. Shomer sachar. But again, they're shutafim in one half of the field, and he says, you watch over my half, I'll pay you for it. Okay, and they can machzikin ze et ze, and they can also have chazaka one against the other. Okay, so this is Shmuel that said that they can have chazaka
on the shirt part.
We're gonna see in the Gemara. Okay, so says the Gemara. But what do we see from here? Shmuel says very clearly that partners can have chazaka one on one another. Rami le Rabbi Abba le Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Abba asked Rabbi Yehuda, Bim'alta de Rav Zakai. In the kever, in the tomb of Rav Zakai. Mi amar Shmuel. Shutaf yesh lo chazaka. Did Shmuel really say that Shutaf can have the chazaka? V'ha amar Shmuel. Didn't Shmuel say Shutaf ki yored birshut dami? A shutaf is someone that goes without permission, which means that what he can't get the chazaka. Lav lememra the shutaf en lo chazaka. Doesn't this mean that he doesn't get chazaka? So now we're contradicting, because before Shmuel said that you have chazaka, and now we're saying that Shmuel doesn't have chazaka. Says the Gemara, because he said Aveha amar Shmuel shutaf ki yored birshut dami. It's as if Shmuel is some random guy that's coming into me.
No, I understood that, but
and this contradicts what he said before. Okay. Says the Gemara, la kashya. Ha denachit lekula, ha denachit lepalga. Amrila lehagisa ve'amrila lehagisa. So says the Gemara like this. You have two possibilities over here. He says that yeah, well, 1 second. So you have like this. You have two possibilities. You have two possibilities of what the difference can be. One is that you have a field. Again, half belongs to Reuven, half belongs to Shimon. What happens here? Shimon comes along and says, Reuven's entire part belongs to me. I have chazakah in it for 3 years. This is one option. Second option is that Reuven and Shimon, they constantly switch halves. Okay, so let's say for 2 years, Reuven owns one half, Shimon owns the other ones, and then they switch it, and then they say, no, this part belongs to me, this part belongs to you, and it goes on a cycle like this. So now when what we're gonna say is the contradiction between Shmuel is what? We're going to say that it depends on the case, and it's going to work backwards and forwards. What does that mean? One opinion is going to say, when he claims the entire field for himself, this is going to be yesh lo chazaka. But when he claims the other half of the field for the chazakah, that's not going to work. And the other opinion is going to say what? When he claims half of the field for himself, it's going to be good chazakah. But if he tries to claim the whole field for himself, that's when it's not going to be a good chazakah. Okay, so again, what was the question? We had a contradiction between Shmuel. Shmuel said in one place, Shutafin, yesh lahem chazakah. Another place we saw that he says, Ki yodin be'reshut dami. It's considered as if he doesn't have a chazakah, right? So how can you, what, he has chazakah, doesn't have a chazakah. So he said, it depends on which case it is. Some people say that if he's trying to do the chazakah on the entire field, it's going to work. And some people say it doesn't work. And then the other case is that what they have the field half, right? And each one is trying to claim one specific part of the field. Okay, so again, some people are going to say that works, and other people are going to say that doesn't work. And then they're going to switch off, meaning whichever opinion that says that the half doesn't work is going to say that the full works, and whichever one is the one that says the full works is going to say the half doesn't work. Okay, so that's going to explain the contradiction between Shmuel. Okay, Ravina gives a different answer. He says, Ha veha denachit lekula. Both of them, meaning one where he says that there's a chazakah, and the other one where he says he doesn't have a chazakah. Both of them are talking about where the second shutaf, the second partner, is trying to get control over the whole field. Vela kashya. Ha de'it badin chaluka. Ha delet badin chaluka. It depends. If are you able to divide this field or not able to divide this field? What does that mean? It depends on if a field is big enough. We know that a minimum size of a field is what? Arba amot al arba amot, right? So let's say you have the field is only 6 amot, and they split it in between them. This, you cannot split the field at all, right? But however, when you have a field that's 8 amot by 8 amot, so in this case, since you can technically split the field, okay, then it would work. Gufa, Amar Shmuel, Shutaf ki yored be'reshut dami. When Shmuel said previously, the Gemara is not going to focus a little bit on this saying of Shmuel that Shutaf that goes into the field ki yored be'reshut dami. He says, "My kamashmanan." What is he trying to tell us? Shutafut en lahem chazaka. That Shutafut doesn't have chazaka, right? That's what he was trying to tell us. So just say it clearly. Lema Shutaf eno chazaka. Just say that Shutaf doesn't have chazakah. What does he have to say? Shutaf ki yored be'reshut. It's as if he's going down into his property. What? Just tell us he doesn't have chazakah. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, לומר שנוטל בשבח המגיע לכתפיים בשדה, שאינו עשויה ליטה, כשדה העשויה ליטה. Now this it comes, let's say a person, right? A person goes into a field, a random person, Shimon, without any instructions or anything, he decides he's going to Reuven's field, and he's going to plant in Reuven's field. Okay, now what happens? He plants in the field, he plants orchards, he plants a bunch of orange trees. Okay, what happens? At the end, the oranges grow. What does he tell Reuven? Tells Reuven, hey, listen, I planted in your field, right? Now give me, okay, maybe it doesn't all belong to me, but at least we have to split the profits. Okay, so as long as the field is meant to be is fit for trees, this is what we say. But now what happens when the field was not meant to plant trees? It was meant for vegetables, it was meant for other things, right? What's the halacha? In this case, Shimon is only able to claim his losses. Even if there was more profit, he still cannot claim a share in the profit. Why? Because if you say that this field was not meant to be planted as trees, since Reuven would have never planted trees here, he could tell Shimon, who in the world told you to do this? There's no gain for you, there's no nothing, this is not proper for you. So take whatever your expenses were and get out of here. And then the rest of the profits are going to be all to him. Okay? But now when they're shutafim, this is what it means. When they're shutafim, so then it's going to be considered as if he had a right to plant in there. And even in this second case where we say he only normally would get the losses, right? He gets the full he gets the full rights. Okay? Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.